Let's see if I can do my screen share. Here we go.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our Masonic education. I would like to introduce you our host, Worshipful Nick Mitchell, past master of Southern California Lodge and a past master of the Grand Lodge of England.
Yeah,
Worshipful Nick.
yeah. Uh, Worshipful, thank you very much for asking me tonight. I'm just going to try and get my screen share maximized, which I should be able to do by pressing F5, and it's not working for some reason. Maybe if I do it on here, that's it. I have to press it on this keyboard. All right, can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Good, good. So this is actually a talk that I gave a year ago on Zoom for Archimedes Lodge, and I went to update it. As you can see, there's hardly any difference. So yeah, not a lot has happened in terms of Masonic activity in California for the last year, in terms of forming new lodges or closures or consolidations. And that's really what I'm going to be talking about tonight. My talk lasts for about 30 to 40 minutes, and at the end I'll be pleased to try and answer any questions that you may have. So going back in history, and I have to apologize before I start to all the worthy brethren from out of state who are with us tonight, because I'm going to be talking about California, not saying a great deal about other states, but hopefully you'll learn a little bit about California's Masonic history. The California Gold Rush of 1849 brought many Masons to California, and some of them arrived bearing newly issued charters or dispensations from Grand Lodges back east. Soon there were about a dozen lodges in California, and they were all working under foreign authorities. This was one of them. This is the original Missouri charter from Western Star Lodge number 2. The following year, in 1850, 4 lodges from the District of Columbia, Missouri, Connecticut, and New Jersey got together in the Masonic Hall in Sacramento to form the Grand Lodge of California. Now, this was before California was even a state, and this Masonic Hall, you can see the picture here, it was really just an attic over a brothel. But that's where those imported lodges rechartered themselves as California number 1, Western Star number 2, Tehama number 3, and Berryman number 4. The first 3 of those lodges are still active and with us today, but the Berryman Lodge was a very short-lived affair. It was named for one of its members, Berryman Jennings, and he lent it not only his name, but some $4,000 at the very generous interest rate of 10% a month. He was actually the first Grand Treasurer of California, and he served for nearly 3 weeks. After he moved out of state, he became the first Grand Master of Oregon.
And teach online.
But his lodge, by then it was renamed Jennings Lodge, it went out of existence with very little funds. And that appears to have been because the lodge was a victim of its own generosity towards non-members. And this was a very common problem for our early lodges, because they weren't only providing relief from the various floods and fires and epidemics that happened back in those days. I guess things haven't changed that much. But back in those days, the California lodges were also helping Masons who arrived sick and destitute after their long journeys from back east. And to make matters worse, many of the healthy new arrivals went straight off to the goldfields without bothering to affiliate with the lodges that were assisting their less fortunate brethren. But eventually things settled down, and this slide shows the number of charters issued by the Grand Lodge of California during each decade since 1850, and there have been a total of 875 to date, which is how this talk gets its title, 875 and counting. And these arrows show when the different lodges were issued, by different charters, I should say, were issued. From California number 1 in 1850, going right up to the Round Table Lodge number 876, which was in 2019. Now, you may be wondering why the numbers go up to 876, and yet we've only chartered 875 lodges. And that's because one of the numbers got skipped, and that was back in 1925. Sojourner Lodge in Monrovia, it was going to take the number 606, but back at the time that was a drug for treating syphilis, and the medical men who were among the lodge's founders, they didn't want to have a dose of 606, so that number is still up for grabs if anybody wants it. Incidentally, a lodge is legally defined in Masonic law. It's not by the name, but by the number on its charter. And a lodge can change its name, but it can't change its number. Now, as you can see from this chart, after the first 10 years, there was a steady flow of new lodges for the rest of the 19th century, all the way through the 1910s. And then during the First World War, we saw a steep growth in new memberships. And that new membership peaked in 1919, while soldiers were returning from the war, and I think they were missing the fraternity and the camaraderie that they'd experienced in the military service, and they wanted to continue that in civilian life. And so we had a huge influx of new members round about the early 1920s, and some of our lodges grew extremely large with over 1,000 members. And as a result, our leadership encouraged California to form smaller, friendlier lodges. As you can see, because of this drive, there were 200 new lodges chartered in the 1920s. But then along came the Depression in the 1930s, and during the next decade we only saw 6. Then after the Second World War, we saw another surge in new members, and that also peaked 1 year after the war in 1946. And it was followed, unfortunately, but perhaps not surprisingly, by a gradual but steady decline. Back in the 1950s, we chartered 94 new lodges, and by 1966, we had a total of 711 active lodges. And that included over a dozen of the jumbo lodges that had more than 1,000 members. But 1966 was our peak year. The boom was over. During the next 50 years, we only formed 34 new lodges. In fact, from 1996 to 2004, we formed none at all. And meanwhile, there were over 400 lodges that closed and consolidated with others. Now, one bright spark in all this gloom was founding of a number of smaller lodges. And our Grand Lodge is now very actively encouraging this, or at least was until we had to shut down, and will be again once we open up again. And this accounts for the increase in charters during the last decade. From the 70s through the noughties, we averaged only 6 new lodges per decade, and that was the same as in the depressed 30s. But in the 2010s, we managed to charter 25 new lodges for a total of 875 to date. We also have one lodge that's still under dispensation. In addition, there were 10 others over the course of history that got dispensations in the past, but for one reason or another never got a California charter. And that makes a total of 886 lodges. And that's not including special purpose lodges, because we have things like the research lodges, historic lodges, and the Grand Master's Lodge. I'll say a little bit more about those later. Now, not all the lodges that we chartered from the Grand Lodge of California were actually in California, because our Grand Lodge was the first one to be formed in the Western United States. And so, as a result, we were called upon to charter lodges in surrounding territories of Oregon, Nevada, and Arizona, as well as in the Philippines and Hawaii. But as Masonry became more firmly established in these places, those lodges withdrew, and they formed their own Grand Lodges in those years you can see there. Hawaii was the last one to go, and they were with us until 1989. In California, many of our early lodges were set up in and around the mining camps. As you might imagine, there was a gold rush going on. But when the gold was worked out and the men moved away, the lodges would fold. Other lodges failed when their buildings burned down. Fires were very common back then. In all, 43 lodges have voted to surrender their charters, and generally that was because they didn't have enough members to carry on. And there was one more lodge, Plumas number 60, that was rechartered as a historic lodge. They no longer make masons, but they continue to preserve a historic building. They were our first historic lodge, and we now have another one, Columbia Lodge, that's under dispensation, which is preserving a historic Masonic building in Columbia Park, I believe. Now, in addition to the lodges that surrendered their charters, there have been another 12 that have their charters revoked over the years. And that happens when Grand Lodge takes the action to revoke a lodge's charter. That can happen if a lodge becomes moribund, or it can arise from disharmony in the lodge, or sometimes it may happen because the lodge was disobeying Masonic laws. And more often than not, when a charter is revoked, it's because there's been a combination of those factors at work. But it's interesting to note that out of those 56 lodges, the chartered lodges that have closed down since 1850, 44 of them were in the 19th century, and there were only 2 during the whole of the 20th century. And I think the reason for this is because of our Masonic home. Our first Masonic home opened in 1899, and that meant after that time, if a lodge was thinking of closing down, it would merge. Rather than closing down, it would merge with another lodge. And that way they could keep their members eligible for Masonic assistance from the homes, rather than leaving them out in the cold. But we have had a lot of consolidations over the years. This slide says 469, but I think it's now 470. So in some parts of the state, there are now no lodges left for a closing lodge to be able to merge with. So in 2005, we formed the Grand Masters Lodge. And the purpose of the Grand Masters Lodge is to receive Masons whose lodges have closed down. So now we're still seeing a few consolidations, but we also once again sometimes see lodges close their doors and turn in their charters. We've had 8 lodges that folded like that since 2010. And now the Grand Masters Lodge has over 500 members, and it's become one of the largest lodges in the state, even though it doesn't confer decrees. Now, we've had a few lodges that got dispensations but never got chartered. Sometimes this happened because of lack of support for the new lodge. For example, if a boomtown rapidly went bust. But we have 2 very far-flung dispensations that didn't quite fit this pattern. The first one was in 1853, when some Masons in Valparaiso, Chile, applied to California for a dispensation under the name of Pacific Lodge. But back in those days, communications were so slow, and the dispensation took so long to arrive, that they also went and applied for a dispensation from Massachusetts. And although our dispensation did get to them first, it turned out that they knew the Massachusetts work better than ours, and perhaps more significantly, that the Massachusetts Grand Lodge would allow them to charge lower degree fees than we would. So in the end, they returned their California dispensation, and they got a charter from Massachusetts. Another interesting dispensation that we issued was back in 1943, and this was issued to Fortitude Lodge at Chongqing in China. back in World War II, this was a major command center for the Allies. In peacetime, a dispensation for a lodge in China would have come out of the Philippines. But at the time, during World War II, they were occupied by Japan, and their Grand Lodge had been suspended, so they weren't able to issue the dispensation. Instead, California did, even though actually we had another Fortitude Lodge that existed in Oakland, California. The plan was that at the end of the war, we would turn the new the new Chongqing Lodge over to the Philippines. But when the war ended, the brethren who were in the US military or government service in Chongqing, they went home, they returned home, and the lodge became too small to carry on, and as a result it ended up surrendering the dispensation. By the way, there's only been one other time that we've had two lodges with the same name, and that was back in 1851, when for a short time we had two Lafayette lodges, both of which were under different dispensations. One was issued by the Grand Master to a new lodge in Lafayette, Oregon, and the other one was issued by the Deputy Grand Master to a lodge that had come from Wisconsin with a Wisconsin charter with the name Lafayette, because that was where they were chartered in Wisconsin. But they had a fire and their charter was destroyed. So our Deputy Grand Master issued them a dispensation to carry on under the name Lafayette. That problem was soon resolved, because the first lodge transferred to the new jurisdiction of Oregon within a year, and the second lodge was rechartered under the new name of its new hometown, which is now known as Nevada Lodge number 13. Although it's not in Nevada, it's in a town that's now called Nevada City, but back then the city was called Nevada. But the name Lafayette wasn't forgotten for long, because a few years later we chartered another Lafayette Lodge in Sebastopol, California, and that lodge still exists today. So, out of a total of 886 lodges, we are left, well, a year ago we had 323, now we're left with 322 active lodges. One is under dispensation, and 321 with charters. So much for the numbers. We'll see what happens when we're allowed to reopen, whether we get a large influx of members or perhaps more consolidations. Who knows? Hopefully everybody will want to come back and some new people will want to come in. That's what I'm hoping. That's what we saw after the wars. Let's see if it happens again after the pandemic. So let's have a look at some of the names. More than half of our early lodges were named after the city, the county, or the region where they met. And that worked fine back in the days when most people lived in or near small towns that would only support a single lodge. But as the towns grew larger, they were going to need additional lodges, and these new lodges had to find different names for themselves. So some of them took the name of a local geographic feature like a mountain, a river, or a valley, or the name of the particular neighborhood they served. And some of these names referred to the position of the lodge. For example, one lodge in Bridgeport, which is the highest county seat in California, it took the name Alta, number 333, meaning high. Other lodges chose names associated with Masonic ritual or tradition, or a virtue. Names like Acacia and Ashlar, Benevolence and Brotherhood, Compass and Charity, to name just a few. But as the number of lodges grew and the obvious names got taken, the new lodges had to start getting creative. For instance, the city of Whittier was named for the poet John Greenleaf Whittier, and its first lodge was naturally called Whittier Lodge. So when it was time to found another lodge in the city of Whittier, it took the name Greenleaf Lodge. Likewise, in the city of Alhambra, The second lodge to be founded there was named Granada Lodge, after the Spanish city that houses the famous Alhambra Palace. There was another clever choice of name, and that's Solomon's Staircase Lodge. And that actually refers to its number, because that's number 357. And in the mining settlement of Murphy's Camp, we had Ophir Lodge, number 33. And Ophir was the source of King Solomon's gold. That's where he mined all his gold, how he got so rich. Now, many other lodge names allude to California's golden heritage. We had Golden Gate, Gold Hill, Golden Trowel, Golden Ashlar, Golden State, Golden Gavel, Golden West, Golden Rule, Golden City, Golden Empire, Golden Bowl, Golden Valley, and Golden Compass's Research Lodge. And that's a lodge that doesn't make Masons, but is just founded to promote Masonic knowledge and learning and research, as its name implies. Now, not to be outdone, there have been some Silver Lodges too. We've had Silver City and Silver Star in Nevada, Silver Gate in San Diego. Silver Gate is actually the name of the entrance to San Diego Bay. It sounds as though it's a poor relation to the Golden Gate in San Francisco. And then there's Silver Trowel. That was named for a traveling trowel that went from lodge to lodge. Silver Cord, which matches the Golden Bowl, and Silverado, that was up in Napa. It was named for a local resort in the area. Then we've had lodges named for California's trees and shrubs, like Live Oak, Manzanita, Oak Grove, Magnolia, Eucalyptus, Sequoia. Now, Acorn was another lodge in Oakland, but obviously Live Oak was already taken, so being a little lodge, they took the name Acorn. Semper Virens, that was in Eureka, Ponderosa, and another Semper Virens, that was after the first one consolidated. Then there were lodges that were named for local industries and agricultures. So we had Anchor Lodge in Wilmington. That was named not just for the Masonic emblem, but also for a local cheese factory. Then there was Orange Grove in Orange, appropriately enough, where oranges were grown. East Belt Lodge was named after a local mining region. And then there was Midway, which was named for a local oil field. Smyrna Lodge was named for a locally grown variety of figs. White Pine up in the north part of the state, honoring the local lumber industry. It's number 555 in Weed. It should really be 420, but it isn't. And then there's Citrol in Brea. At the time, their main industries were citrus and oil, and I guess they wanted to reflect both of those in their lodges' names. Some lodges used the nicknames or slogans of cities, as you can see here. These are all the nicknames of different cities around the state. Bay City is the one name for San Francisco. Poinsettia is the slogan or emblem of Ventura. We've had lodges named for all 5 orders of architecture: a Tuscan, 2 Dorics, 2 Ionics, a Corinthian, and a Composite Lodge, which is now part of Ionic Composite Lodge. So composite by name, composite by nature. Now, recently we've seen these smaller traditional observance lodges being formed, and they've adopted, a lot of them have adopted classical Latin and Greek names like Lux, meaning light, Academia, Prometheus was the bringer of fire, Paideia was an ancient Greek system of education, Logos, the word, Pythagoras, Templum Rosae, that alludes to Rosicrucianism. Novus Veteris means the new old, because they aimed to reinvent the Masonic experience. Aquila, meaning eagle, and another geometer, Archimedes. Now, some lodges derived their names from other lodges. For example, There was a group of Masons from Beacon Lodge in St. Louis, Missouri, and they founded Beacon of the West in Los Angeles. Then there's a Green Dragon Masonic Fellowship Lodge, which takes its name from this historic Masonic tavern in Boston. And when Searchlight Lodge started up in Long Beach, they had an interesting choice of names because they acquired their paraphernalia second-hand from a closed lodge in Searchlight, Nevada. So they took the name that was already on the jewels that they'd acquired. Many of the early lodges took the names of living people, like their founders or local landowners. One was even called E.K. Kane, after this famous Arctic explorer. Other lodges chose names to honor the sitting Grand Master or another Masonic leader. Perhaps they were hoping to gain their favor and get a dispensation of the charter quickly. But back in 1873, Grand Master Leonidas Pratt put a stop to this practice. And that was because that was when Hayward Lodge was named not for the city, but for a millionaire known as, whose name was Alvinza Hayward. And this was a man, although his character was above blemish or reproach, the Grand Master at the time felt it unwise to continue naming lodges for a living person. Because, as he said, until the end of life, there is no certainty what may be done by the best of us, and no knowing how soon the deepest odium may attach to reputations which are today the brightest. Those words are just as true now as they were back in the 19th century, I think. But besides that, I think part of the Grand Master's reasoning was the tradition that the person being honored by a new lodge would be expected to present it with a valuable set of jewels. And that might not be a burden for a millionaire, but it could be for a Grand Master. So since that time, when a lodge has been named to honor a person, it's typically been for someone who recently died or perhaps a historic personage, like the original charter master of a lodge or a founding father of the USA. But some lodges have been creative and found ways to get around this rule. For example, Security Lodge in Bakersfield was named to honor Grand Master Kreitz, and he was the vice president of the Security Trust Company. A number of lodges have changed their names. Sometimes it was because they moved to a different city, or because their city was renamed, or even because a new city grew up elsewhere in the state with the same name. Now, when a lodge gives up its name, it can then be reused by another lodge. For instance, there have been 5 different Unity Lodges over the years. The first one was Unity Lodge number 88, and that was up at Orleans Flat, up in the Sierras. After a year, it was renamed Quitman Lodge to honor John Quitman, who was a general in the Mexican-American War. Its reconstructed lodge hall is now a part of the Malakoff-Diggins State Park. Then there was Unity Lodge number 130 in San Bernardino. They took that name when Unity in Orleans Flat had given it up. But they didn't last very long. They had their charter revoked in 5 years for disobeying the Constitution. Next, there was Unity 368 at Glendale. They chose their name because their founders came from 2 rival communities. And they wanted to show that there was unity between these 2 rival communities. But in 1979, they consolidated, and their name was up for grabs again, and this time it went to Unity Lodge 753 at Hawthorne. That's another consolidating lodge. That lodge later changed its name to Beach Cities because it's located right near where the 3 city boundaries of Manhattan Beach, Hermosa Beach, and Redondo Beach join up. So that's an appropriate name for the lodge. And so finally we have Unity Lodge number 632 at San Diego. Again, that name reflects a consolidation. Now, although Masons strive for unity, Back in the 1850s and 60s, feelings were running high over the issues surrounding slavery and the Civil War. And as a result, some of the lodges became divided. For example, in 1860, there was a group of members who demitted from Occidental Lodge in San Francisco, and they formed Oriental Lodge, number 144. And then in Petaluma Lodge, there was a group of Confederate sympathizers who wanted California to withdraw from the Union and to fly this flag in place of the Stars and Stripes. So to prevent any possible disharmony, they withdrew from Petaluma Lodge, and they started a new lodge, which they decided to call Arcturus Lodge. Very clever choice of name, because Arcturus, as you see from this flag, Arcturus is the star that guards the bear, and they wanted to honor this flag. Now, we've had many other lodges named for stars. Western Star, Morning Star, Rising Star, Vesper, the Evening Star, Polar Star, North Star, Silver Star, Evening Star, Hesperian, that's another name for the Evening Star, Polaris, the North Star, and Three Stars Lodge. No, that's not its Yelp rating. This refers to the national flag of the lodge's Filipino founders. And then there was also Star King Lodge in San Francisco, and that was named for this famous orator from the Civil War era. We've had more than 1,100 different lodge names used over the years, and I don't have time to look at them all. But I wanted just to follow the history of one particular group of 16 neighborhood lodges in San Francisco. And the first of these lodges was Presidio Lodge. I'm sorry, I can't quite see my slide here. Let's see if I can make it go away. Can you see that, Worshipful? Can you see that name? Yeah. Anyway, Presidio Lodge in San Francisco. I've lost my place now. It was named for a local military base. Now, we've had a number of other lodges formed in connection with military establishments. That includes Pearl Harbor in Hawaii, Corregidor in the Philippines, Hamilton, that was named for an air base in Nevada, and General Henry H. Arnold Lodge, that was a lodge that met in Edwards Air Force Base, and it was named after the founder of the air base. Amity, as you can see, in 1905, that's a Masonic virtue. Then in 1906 we had Richmond Lodge. That was the year of the earthquake. By the way, Richmond Lodge was named for a neighborhood in San Francisco, and not for the city across the bay, because that was still only a small town at the time. Parnassus Lodge was named after a local hill, and Boulder Lodge was named for a Norse god, because its founders, it had founders who came from Sweden or Swedish ancestry, and it wasn't because they lacked hair. Quite a few lodges were founded by Masons who had a common fatherland and chose names to reflect this. So there was Hermann Lodge, which worked in German, and that was named for the legendary leader who drove the ancient Romans out of Germany. Another one was Germania Lodge, founded in 1913, but they very wisely changed their name to Acacia Lodge a few years later. Speranza Italiana was an Italian language lodge, and their name means Italian hope. It refers to the newly unified Kingdom of Italy, which unified in 1870. Valais de France reflects the Scottish Rite origins from this French-speaking lodge. Melrose Lodge, founded by a group of men with a Scottish heritage. Arabic Lodge, with men from Arabic backgrounds. Maya Lodge had Mexican roots. And Tila Pass commemorated a historic battle in the Philippines. And then we've recently had two recent lodges with Armenian connections. Mount Ararat is Armenia's national symbol, and Ravens Rock in Glendale refers to an Armenian legend. Okay, let's get back to San Francisco. Fairmount is a neighborhood in San Francisco, and then in 1916 we see two new lodges being formed. One is honouring the Argonauts, who were the gold rush pioneers. They were like Jason's crew. They were sailing in search of gold. And then there was Alta Vista. No, that wasn't a search engine, but they met halfway between the neighborhoods of Alta Plaza and Anza Vista. Then in the 20s, we see a lot of lodges being formed, and their names often commemorated the recent war. Argonne was named for a military campaign, and there were other lodges of this period known as Victory, Chateau Thierry, that was a battle in World War One, and then there's Clarence F. Smith Lodge. He was a Los Angeles Mason who was killed in action, and the more recent Clarence F. Smith Daylight Lodge is also named in honor of that previous lodge. Then we had 4 new lodges founded in 1922. The first 2 had patriotic names: Mount Vernon, and that was the home of George Washington. Seal Rock is a geological formation in San Francisco, and Jonathan is another patriotic name. It's an earlier version of Uncle Sam, who was known as Brother Jonathan. It's largely forgotten now, but it was well known back at the time. Then in 1923, we see Military Service Lodge. That was a lodge formed for ex-servicemen. And we also had a service lodge in Long Beach and a veteran lodge in West LA. Then Veritas, which means truth. And the last lodge of this group, Hunters Point Naval, another lodge that was named for a military establishment. In this case, it was a local shipyard. Now, these 16 lodges have all since then consolidated into one single lodge. I wanted to put them into brackets, but that didn't quite work, since some of them went through as many as 5 consolidations, but others only had 3 or 4. Now, when 2 lodges consolidate, their new name is often a compound of the 2 old names. But then if the lodge has another consolidation, it's likely to end up with an unwieldy triple-barreled name. So the lodge often goes back to using a previous name or takes a totally new one. So, Guardian Jordan Golden Bowl Lodge soon changed its name to Southeast, and Alisal Sequoia San Ramon quickly became Pleasanton. But we still today have Atwater Larchmont T. La Paz. Incidentally, the longest name we've had in California was a combination of just 2 lodge names, and they were both named for electrical pioneers: Alexander Graham Bell, Benjamin Franklin. And that lodge was created in 1980 when these 2 lodges merged. But 4 years later, they consolidated with John Marshall Lodge, and that was named for a Supreme Court justice. And then they went from having the longest name in the state to the shortest, because they became Tri-Lodge. We've only had one other 3-letter name, and that was Lux Lodge, which still exists. Okay, back to San Francisco. Let's watch the consolidation process at work on our bracket of 16. It started in 1963 when we had 2 consolidations, Amity Seal Rock and Veritas Jonathan. And then another 5 years passed before we had 2 more consolidations, Argonaut Argonne and Alta Vista Mount Vernon. The next year, Parnassus and Presidio combined, but the newer lodge, Parnassus, kept its number, and it took first place in the combined name. Presidio was the smaller, less active lodge and was the weaker partner in that marriage. Then in 1974, Richmond and Military Service Lodges combined with a completely new name, Brotherhood Lodge. And Fairmount combined with George Washington. They kept their number, but they gave up their name. The following year, Hunters Point Naval was completely swallowed up by George Washington Lodge, which was much larger, and so they just disappeared. And then we start on round 2 of the consolidations. Amity Seal Rock, merging with Veritas Jonathan, and they went back to Amity's original name. In 1983, we had Argonaut Argonne and Alta Vista Mount Vernon merging with a new name, a new patriotic name, Columbia. Then in 87, we see Amity merging with Brotherhood, and Columbia merging with Boulder, and that was the last remaining lodge of the original 16. 3 years later, Columbia Boulder merges with Parnassus Presidio, and they go back to being Columbia again. 2 more years, and George Washington gets swallowed up by Brotherhood. Finally, in 2005, Columbia and Brotherhood merge and emerge as the winner of this round of 16, Columbia Brotherhood, number 370, with 16 lodges that it was found originally existed. Now, some lodges have seen 3-way consolidations, and there's even been a 4-way consolidation. But that was in 1991, when Golden Trowel Lodge was formed from Anchor, Manchester, Linwood and Tyre lodges. It's now part of Golden Trowel Norwalk number 273, and that lodge is pretty big. They have 11 original lodges. We've had many lodges named for United States presidents, as you can see from this list here. But when Warren Harding had 2 lodges named for him after he died in 1923, you can see that was potentially confusing. So we now have a rule that it's not allowed to name more than 1 lodge to honor a particular person, place, or event. In addition to lodges named after our presidents, we've also had lodges named for historical foreign rulers. There's Most Worshipful Manuel Luis Quezon Lodge, I hope I pronounced that right. That was named for a former president of the Philippines, and he was also a past Grand Master of the Philippines. And then there was King Kalakaua Daylight Lodge. That was named for the last king of Hawaii. A very interesting character. This man was so dedicated to Masonry that back in 1891, when he was dying in San Francisco, he dragged himself up off his deathbed to go and be made a Shriner, and that was the last thing he did, really, before he died. Now, sometimes you can have a misleading name for a lodge. For example, Concord Lodge met in Sacramento, not in the city of Concord. And likewise, we had a Southgate Lodge that was named not because it met in Southgate, but it met at the south border of Los Angeles. In fact, the city of Southgate didn't even exist when that lodge was formed. Later on, we had Westgate Lodge, which was started on the west side of Los Angeles. And so, not to be outdone, Sunset Lodge changed its name to Eastgate to complete the set. Finally, I just want to mention 3 other potentially misleading names. Orange Belt Lodge, and that sounds like a judo class to me. There was Foxcoats Daylight Lodge, or still is Foxcoats Daylight Lodge, which always, to me, thinks that makes me think that they're all furriers in that lodge. And finally, Normal Heights Lodge. Presumably, they didn't take any applicants who were too short or too tall. And that completes my written part of the presentation, but I'd be happy to take any questions, or try and take any questions. If I can answer them, I'll do my best.
Thank you, Worshipful Nick. It was a beautiful presentation. So
It's an honor.
The floor is open for questions.
Worshipful Mitchell, it's Rick Baca
Hey,
from
Worshipful
Oasis
Rick.
Lodge. I find it interesting that you said that Grand Lodge didn't use number 606 for obvious reasons at the time, but we still used number 666, which has a negative connotation. I find that fascinating.
Well, I don't think it had so much of a negative connotation at the time because, you know, all the horror movies of the 70s hadn't come out at that point. You know, the Omen and all those lodges. So it wasn't... Yeah, but you're right. 666 is the number of the beast.
Yeah. Also known as Reseda Lodge. So.
Yes. I went to their installation a few years ago.
A worshipful question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, maybe I miss it, but why is it a charter be surrendered?
So that can happen if a lodge, typically it happens when the lodge doesn't have enough members to go on meeting, and the remaining members decide to just close the lodge and they surrender their charter and give it back to Grand Lodge.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead, Army. Huh? Any more questions here?
Worshipful Nick,
Go ahead.
wonderful to see you, my friend.
Good.
And outstanding presentation. There are quite a few people asking for some type of transcript or a link to this.
So I believe that this meeting has been recorded. That's what Sean, Worshipful Sean said he was going to do. So hopefully he can send you the link. I do have the script. If you send me an email, I can certainly share the script with you, although it's, I think you'd do better seeing the recording, but I can certainly email you the script. If you send me an email, I can give you my email address if you...
Yeah, I will send it to you tomorrow, Worshipful Nick.
Okay, great.
And it can be viewed on the San Fernando Facebook page, San Fernando Lodge number 343 page.
Excellent, excellent. But maybe maybe if there are there any more questions, or should we stop the recording at this point?
And Worshipful Nick, just one last point. You know I do love you, but I'm going to rat you out at Scottish Rite. So be prepared to give this again.
I'd be happy. It's on my computer. It took very little effort to prepare this time. I'd be delighted to present it. Just let me know when you'd like me to do that. Any more questions then?
So I think since the Graham Bell lodges consolidated and shortened their name, our lodge, this one,
Yes,
has the longest name right now.
you could well be right. Certainly in terms of words, it's the
It's
longest.
it's
Words.
kind of hard to introduce yourself, you know, when
Well, you can
Anyway.
always be Alt P, you know. That's what everybody calls it, isn't it?
Thank you, Worshipful.
My pleasure.
Very, very, very nice presentation.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Worshipful. Any more questions before I stop the recording? No more questions? No more questions? Okay.
Worshipful Nick, first,
Yeah.
hold on. Brother Jerome is raising his hand. Brother Jerome.
Good evening, brethren. Worshipful Nick, first of all, thank you very much for that presentation. It added again to one of my history learning. For the benefit of everyone, Brother Jerome here from the most worshipful Grand Lodge, AFAM of Illinois, Milburn Lodge number 127. And I'm not sure if I'm the youngest here to be raised to the sublime degree. I was only raised 2018.
Well, congratulations.
But my background with the Masonic family, I'm a Demolay, senior Demolay from the Philippines.
Oh, welcome. Illinois, actually, I think back in the 1920s, they had a really, really big lodge with, I think, about 3,500 members. One of the Illinois lodges I found in my research. I don't think it was your lodge, but I think it was a lodge in Chicago. But the lodges were really big back then. So yeah, Illinois, I think, had the biggest lodge in the world at that time.
Yes. Thank you also, Brother Shan, for Worshipful Shan, for welcoming me.
Thank you for joining, Brother Jerome. Hope to see you soon in person.
Thank you.
And Worshipful Nick, I would like to take this opportunity to thank all the brothers and worshipful masters from different lodges and different jurisdictions. Thank you, everyone, for supporting our Masonic
Are we going
education.
to have a toast now?
Oh yeah,
In honor of National Wine Day, I think we're going to have a toast.
there you go.
Right.
Uh-oh.
Oh,
I didn't know we were doing this. Hold on, I don't want to be outdone here.
You know, Worshipful Nick, let me know when you're ready to be a Shriner, my friend.
I'm already there.
Are you in a unit yet?
I've been a Shriner for something like 25 years.
Oh, we joined in a similar year. Are you in a unit yet?
I was in the club. I was in Past Master Shrine Club, and they sort of fizzled out. Right now, I'm kind of busy with other things to join a unit or a club. But when things settle down, maybe after the pandemic has finished, I'd be willing to consider joining something.
Worshipful Shan, this Masonic education is record breaking. You have like 57 earlier participants. Now, I haven't seen that much, you know.
yeah. Thank you for Worshipful Joey for joining us.
Even on some installation via Zoom, you know.
Yeah.
But this is a lot of people.
It's so nice to be able to talk to people from other parts of the country too. And that's one good thing that's come out of the pandemic.
Yes,
we can spread our masonry around the world. And I think I've attended more of my English lodge meetings since we had the lockdown, just on Zoom.
It's nice to see brothers like Worshipful Rick, Worshipful Steve Barbosa. Thank you for taking time to join us. Oh, where's the toast, Worshipful?
Okay, well, let's have the Tyler's toast to all poor and distressed Masons, wishing them a speedy relief to their sufferings and a safe return to their native lands, should it be so desired. All poor and distressed Masons. Cheers.
Yes.
Poor and distressed Masons.
Good night to everybody. It was a nice lecture.
Well, thanks for watching. Thanks for joining.
Thank you. Good night. Stay
Good night.
safe.
No, wow, we've had people from Bulgaria.
I think it's fascinating, Worshipful Nick, that with all the lodges you covered, there's still quite a bit that you didn't cover.
Oh, well,
because there's so many lodges. It's like
yeah, I gave a 1 hour long version of this talk to LA 42 some time ago, and I think everybody fell asleep, so I cut it down.
Well, because I think most of the lodges are named after the city that they're in, so there's really nothing notable to speak on them.
Yeah, the first lodges generally were, not all of them, but a lot of them were, and then they had to branch out, as you say. And I counted the names. There've been over 1,100 all told.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
Wow.
And that's just California, of course.
Yes.
You get the same names elsewhere. Of course, in England, we don't have the restriction that you can only have one lodge with the same name. So you can often have different lodges meeting in different cities that share a name, which is kind of fun. So you can be a sister lodge.
Has a lodge ever reconstituted itself? That you know of?
So what can happen is you can have a lodge that's chartered under one particular Grand Lodge and then turns in its charter and forms under a different Grand Lodge. Yes, that's happened. For instance, Vallée de France did that. I believe they were originally had a French charter, and they turned that in to become a California lodge.
Right, but I'm saying like a lodge that either surrendered their charter or had their charter revoked. Instead of applying for a dispensation to receive a new number, could you reconstitute an older lodge number?
No, once it's finished, it's finished. If the same members were going to start another lodge, it would be a new lodge with a new number.
Got it.
Now, it could take the same name. That's what we saw with Clarence F. Smith Lodge. The Clarence F. Smith Lodge, I think, closed, I forget when, about 30 years ago. It consolidated. And there's a guy, Ralph Morton, I remember. I think that was his name. He wanted to revive the name. And so he was instrumental in founding a new lodge with the same name. But of course, it's a new lodge, different members, different number. And remember what a lodge is. It's just the group of members with the charter. It's not anything else. So, if the lodge closes and they reform, it's the members the brothers who reform to form a new lodge. It's not the old lodge. Oh, I enjoyed doing that talk, actually.
Cool. All right, Worshipful Nick, Worshipful Sean, take care. Brethren, take care.
Yeah.
Worshipful Rick, thank you.
Thank you.
Good night to you.
Good
night.
So, Worshipful Nick, our senior warden is present, Wesley Brower, and junior warden Chris Brickman.
Greetings, brethren.
Good evening, Worshipful. For attending. Thank you for the presentation. It was very well done. Thank you, and thank you for the invitation.
And thanks for coming.
Yeah, nice to see you.
Worshipful Alejandro, thank you.
Alex,
Yeah.
Illustrious.
Yeah. All right.
You see, I'm wearing my green jacket today.
I noticed.
Now, brother senior warden Alejandro will be next year. He's the incoming master.
He's busy this year.
Thank you. He's a great guy. So, Worshipful incoming. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah. Next month, I'm gonna, this week I did the presentation for the Masonic education at Oasis, Oasis Lodge. But next month we have also the personal improvement series, and it's my turn again with the topic manifesting abundance. So you're all invited to join us. I'm sure Worshipful Danny Fox will send out the invitations, and it will be very nice to see you, all of you brothers, Worshipful brothers there.
And I don't think I've given this lecture in alchemy on George Hadley Hines, have I?
No.
So if you want me to do that there, let me know.
Yeah, and actually, I don't think you mentioned Pan Americana Lodge.
Yeah.
Did you?
Did I mention Pan Americana?
Because
yes, that's an affinity lodge, of course.
Yeah, it actually fits into a couple of categories. It's an affinity lodge, but it also is a consolidation lodge because it inherited Cahuenga La Brea. That's why it's Pan Americana 513. And it's also a traditional observance lodge.
We have very few lodges now that haven't consolidated.
Yeah.
At some point. There's still a few around, but they're few. They're the minority.
Yeah. So I just wanted to make that comment because is a Pan Americana was started as a club about probably 10, 15 years ago.
They wanted to work.
It's funny that this year we're gonna celebrate the 100th anniversary. because of inheriting Cahuenga La Brea.
Oh, right.
And Cahuenga La Brea was a consolidation. It was Cahuenga Lodge and then La Brea Lodge. They consolidated. I don't remember which one had the number 513. When Pan Americana was a club, it was 800 and something.
I can look it up for you if you want, if you hold on.
And once he got chartered, inherited the name, and consolidated with the other two lodges, inherited that number, 513.
So let's see what the history of Lodge 513 is. Just scrolling down, here we go. 513 was founded in 1921 as Cahuenga Lodge, and then emerged with La Brea in 1978 and became Pan Americana in 2008.
There you go.
Now, wasn't Pan Americana originally wasn't that originally meant to be a Spanish-speaking lodge?
It is. It is a Spanish-speaking lodge. Yeah.
Because I thought at one time they weren't able to do that.
No, actually, besides Maya Lodge has a dispensation to confer degrees in Spanish, but they do. I think I don't know. I haven't been visiting their stated meetings, but I think they run their stated meetings in English. But Pan Americana Lodge, it's all in Spanish. We have a charter to do everything in Spanish.
Oh, that's great. Yes.
State meetings and degrees. We have done a few first degrees in English upon the request of the candidate, but mainly the lodge was one of the main intentions for the lodge is to bring other Masons from other lodges that are not recognized, that are already living in LA, and they probably came from Mexico, Central America, South America, and they're looking for a lodge, and they were already Masons there, or they became Masons here at a different lodge that is not recognized by the Grand Lodge of California, and so a way for them to become regularized. That was one of the intentions, to be available for those type of candidates.
Oh, sure, because if they're from a recognized jurisdiction, they can turn in their charter, unrecognized charter, and apply to the Grand Lodge to form a recognized Grand Lodge. But they'd have to use the California working. That's the only problem. They'd have to learn a different ritual.
Yeah, and a lot of these brothers that came from other lodges. Not all the members had that experience, obviously, but the ones that have, they come from more like a Scottish rite, practicing the ancient and accepted Scottish rite. They call it the symbolic lodge.
Yeah.
What we call the Blue Lodge.
And in England we call it the Craft Lodge. They're all the same thing.
Yeah, exactly. But it was great. It was great seeing you, Brother Nick.
Good to see you, Brother Alex, yes.
Hopefully we'll see each other, if not at another virtual presentation at our AMD meeting.
Yeah, look forward to that. Right?
Okay.
To be,
have a good night.
You too.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you, Brother Alejandro. Good night.
Thank you, Worshipful Sean.
Did you see Danny already?
Yeah, but he forgot it because he came to do because I'm into music and he's into video, so we are actually doing a music video for one of my songs.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, so he came. He brought all of his equipment and he forgot to put that. But we're gonna see each other soon again, so
okay.
I'll remind them next time.
Yeah. Okay.
But thank you again.
Thank you for
Have
joining.
a good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Worshipful Sean.
Oh, there you go.
Congratulations to this successful event. It's a well-hosted Masonic Education Night.
Thank you, Worshipful Steve.
Worshipful Nick, thank you also. Very good material. I learned a lot tonight.
Good. I hope you didn't fall asleep too much.
There's still part two.
When you're doing a presentation on Zoom, it's very hard to, you can't see your audience because you're screen sharing. You can't hear them because they're muted. And so it's hard to know if you're talking too loud or too fast or too slow. So I try and I try and keep it at a reasonable speed. But did you know on Zoom there's a button now you can press to go if you want the presenter to go faster or slower?
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's under reactions. You can I think there's a faster or slower button somewhere.
Yeah, but Worshipful Nick, you have a total audience of 57, including
Wow,
you.
57. That's tomato ketchup. Okay, well, I'm enjoying my wine tonight because I didn't have anything before giving the talk, and now now I've got a nicely lubricated throat.
Yeah, I would like to acknowledge also the presence of Worshipful Ernie Atuel of Pacific Rim Lodge in Long Beach.
Welcome.
Thank you, Worshipful Ernie. Is there muted?
Thank you, Worshipful Sean, and our presenter, Worshipful Nick Mitchell. A very nice presentation. I learned a lot, and all the brethren would surely appreciate everything you did. Thank you so much.
It was an honor to be asked.
Great evening.
And our senior deacon present here, Brother Cesar La Chica. I think he's
muted.
He's refilling his shots. Yeah, he's there.
Thank you very much, Worshipful Nick. It was a very, very wonderful presentation, and we learned a lot.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Worshipful.
And Worshipful Brother Ed Valdez Fontanilla. Thank you, sir. From Las Vegas, right? You're muted. You're muted, Brother Ed. I believe Brother Ed is the one who fixed the AC of Southern California Lodge.
It hasn't yet happened because we're not using our building at the moment, as you might imagine.
Oh, okay. Save some bills.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you for joining us.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good to see you.
See you in the lodge.
Yeah.
Soon. And
maybe July.
I don't know.
Who knows? It's up to the Grand Master and the Great Architect.
And Worshipful Nick, before I forget, we have a bunch of prospects tonight. We have a total of 11 of them.
Oh, well.
11 prospects.
I hope they found it interesting because this is a bit technical for a non-Mason, but yeah, it's historical.
Six of them is from San Fernando. We were there this morning to clean up, so I told them this is interesting, so don't miss it.
No, there's nothing esoteric in the talk.
Yeah. So I told them this is a special talk tonight, so you will miss this.
I have another talk that I've given a couple of places called The Mysterious 15. That is a little bit more esoteric, so if you want me to do that one day, let me know.
Oh, that's nice.
But that one is for Masons only.
Can Enter the Apprentice join? Or just purely third degree Master Mason?
So what I've done in the past, I have two different versions. One is if there are entered apprentices in the room, I will leave out a couple of things. But yes, so if there are entered apprentices that want to come, they can come, and I just need to know who, and then I can adjust my talk appropriately.
Oh, okay. And also, I would like to acknowledge Worshipful Leo Rivera. He's our lodge secretary. Worshipful, good evening to you. You're muted.
Oh, good evening, Worshipful. Worshipful Nick Mitchell. Yeah, nice presentation.
Thanks for coming. Thanks for listening.
Yes, sir. And thank you very much, Worshipful Sean. Yeah, it was nice. And
to all the officers, thank you. And Brother Hector Bustamante or Worshipful Bustamante is here. He's muted.
Okay. Yes, I'm here. Thank you so much for that amazing presentation. We learned a lot tonight. Well, I am speaking so Yes, I'm speaking. Well, I am here from Peru, and I'm beside my wife that is sleeping.
Oh,
But yes, I just wanted to say thank you so much for that amazing presentation.
Were you
Thank you.
able? Oh, thanks for coming. Were you able to see the slides? Okay.
Yes, yes, yes. It's
Oh, good, good, good.
in the middle of the night.
So
Thank you so much.
tomorrow I will be uploading the video in the San Fernando Lodge 343 Facebook page.
All right.
Yeah. Or
Thank you so much.
we have a YouTube page, San Fernando Lodge number 343.
I look forward to seeing that. See how I looked.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you, brother.
And good night.
Good night to you. Take care and stay safe. And brother Todd Amox, good evening to you, sir. I don't know, he's muted. And brother Jimmy. Who else? Brother Quain. Quain? Oh, Quain. I don't know how to pronounce it. Sorry, I don't know how to pronounce the last name.
Yes, brother Jimmy's from Georgia. I'm
Oh,
here.
yeah. Okay. Good evening to you. Oh, Georgia. So what time? +3.
Yeah. So it's a little late, but I just wanted to say it was a great presentation, a lot of information. I visited California a great deal and have been to the lodges out there, and it's just such a wonderful experience. The work's a tad different, but it's always wonderful, as you well know, to visit the different states. And California is one of them where the work is just great, and just to be able to see how different it is. But again, wonderful presentation. I love the research. Thank you so much for taking the time and going to all the trouble for all this. This is great.
Well, I hope you'll be able to visit us again soon.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Speaking of England too, go to over there as well, as you know how different the work is. Love visiting the lodge there on, what is it? Great Street, I think.
Great Street. Yeah. That's where I was raised.
Awesome. Just a wonderful place to visit. And the work, of course, is very different, and just wonderful to see that. And the brotherhood is just outstanding as always. So, yep. Wonderful experience.
Thank you.
Thank you
for
again.
joining. Take care and stay safe, brother Jimmy.
Thank you so much, y'all too. God bless. And keep the brotherhood going with what you're doing. This is one way that the mystic tie keeps us all together, brother. Thank you again. Have a great night.
Good night.
Good night.
Brother Orlando, or Worshipful Orlando Marcelo, good evening to you, sir. I saw him on video a while ago. Who else? Brother Patrick, or Worshipful Patrick Moldon. Good evening, sir.
Hey, how are you?
Everything's good.
Good. I'm just putting my kids to bed. I'm Worshipful Patrick Muldoon, past master of Windsor Lodge in Northern California, Sonoma County. And it's great to join you guys.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us.
I enjoyed the presentation, and it's great that you guys are keeping the light alive.
Yes, we can't meet in the lodge, so we just meet in Zoom.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thanks again.
Thank you. Stay safe and take care.
It's amazing. I'm just going through the chat. I see brethren from Peru, Nigeria, Canada, all over the place.
Malaysia. Yeah.
Malaysia? Oh. And the Philippines, was your grandfather on there?
He was there, but he left. I think he got disconnected.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, here's Brother Orlando, or Worshipful Orlando.
Oh, Brother Orlando. How are you, sir? Good evening. Thank you so much, Worshipful Sean and Worshipful Nick.
What
Thank you
lodge
so
are
much. Camp Spring 227, Grandlands of Maryland.
Oh, wow. See, Maryland.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Welcome.
That's excellent.
Hope you enjoyed it.
11:43 right now. But I really enjoy everything, sir. I learn a lot. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Kuya. Stay safe.
Okay. Thank you.
So I just got back from Las Vegas, so they're gonna be open next month.
Good.
Yeah, they will. I will. Hopefully, I can go there and attend the second degree on March 6th.
Ah,
they're open. Yeah, because the last time the last time I attended there was somewhere October. So
I cannot go to Las Vegas and attend the degree on March the 6th because that's my wedding anniversary.
oh, that's more special. No. That's a big violation.
Exactly.
Way bigger than the CM the code. Yeah.
But I'd love to go to Vegas, and maybe I'll go with Doreen.
Yeah, we
Who
have
knows?
also a brother from Las Vegas, a senior warden, Brother Resi Esguerra. Can we hear from you, Brother Resi?
Yes, worshipful. Good evening. Thank you very much for the invitation. I really appreciate it, and I really love the presentation.
You're always
Thank
welcome.
Thank you.
Any updates from your lodge? They're open, Worshipful Nick. They're open. Everybody.
Excellent. Well, I've had my vaccinations, so I'm able to travel again.
I hope I could invite you one of these days out here in Vegas.
Good. I look forward to seeing you.
Yeah, they will have the stated meeting on the March 6th, and then all the way after the stated meeting, they will do the second degree.
Oh, on the same night.
I'll be there March 5, Brother Resi.
Yeah, I'll wait for you, worshipful. Thank you. Thank you for the invitation.
Whoever wants to join, no, you're always welcome, Brother Resi.
Thank you,
You're
worshipful.
always there.
All right.
Thank you for your support.
No problem.
Who else here? Brother Chris Brickman, our junior warden. Bro, Chris, still there?
Hello there. I'm still here.
Thank you, Bro, Chris.
Yeah, thanks for the wonderful presentation, Worshipful Nick. That was quite interesting, and you did a good job of keeping us all engaged and awake. And I'm very impressed that we had so many attendees tonight. This was a really, really beautiful turnout of brothers.
Installation.
Yeah, it was quite impressive.
Well, I thank you for coming, and I'm glad to hear that you enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Yeah, Worshipful Nick, there's a part 2, right?
There's a longer version, but
yeah, the second section of the talk. Soon.
I could do something, but it'll take a bit of research.
Yeah, I want to ask you a while ago about like the connection between the Grand Lodge of England and the Grand Lodge of California, but I don't want to take that long. So maybe next topic.
I mean, that is another talk that I've given many years ago. That is something that's for Master Masons only.
Oh, okay. Well, do.
Because that I talk a lot about the ritual, the connection between the Grand Lodge of England. I mean, there's no direct connection, obviously, because California came from the eastern United States, and they originally can trace back to England. And there are charts showing like the Grand Lodge family tree with England at the top, and then all the other branches leading out and down all over the world. That's another story.
Yeah. We will
Any
schedule
more
it.
Comments? I have to write it. Wait for me to write it first. Because I have to adapt it for Zoom. When you're doing a talk on Zoom, you want to have some slides and things to show.
Yeah, you have a good slide PowerPoint presentation.
Yeah, I did it with OpenOffice presentations. I don't use Microsoft PowerPoint.
Oh, not PowerPoint. Oh, okay. I thought it was PowerPoint. Like I saw it, the arrow and everything.
It works the same way.
Oh, okay.
That's what I use. Is there anybody else who wants to say hello? If not, I'm going to call it a night because I'm getting a bit tired now.
Take your last shot. Where's the mug? There you go. So, cheers, Worshipful Nick.
Cheers, yeah. Oh, I've emptied this. Cheers. Good night, brethren.
Night, Worshipful Nick.
Thanks for attending. Thanks for paying attention. And
thank you, Worshipful. Have a good
stay
night.
safe. Hope to
We
see
are
you.
Orlando.
Good night.
Hope to see you in the face.
Thank you very much.
Good night. Good night.
I hope to see you soon, sir.
Thank you very much,
Have
Worshipful.
a great night, everybody. Thanks for attending, brethren.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Night. Good night.
Good night.
Well done. Who's here? Brother Caesar.
Nalate ako, Worship.
Uy! Brother Chris Abiva, Senior Warden. Sunnyside.
Was it recorded?
Watch the replay.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I missed it.